This is Melissa.
Welcome to This is Melissa podcast, where we talk about all things real estate, from home buying and selling to real estate education, improving your business, or just talking about life. We are your source of real estate information. Melissa Hailey is a real estate broker, educator, coach, and influencer in the real estate industry. Join in and listen to the Wonder Woman of real estate, Melissa Hailey, as she helps raise the bar in real estate.
Hey, this is Melissa. I am a real estate broker, educator, and coach, and today I am joined by Shelyna Tinglin. Yay! Shelyna is a certified instructor with Agent Advantage Coaching and Training. She's also a speaker, business strategist, associate broker, trainer, mentor. She works with current and aspiring entrepreneurs on crafting profitable business strategies focused on sales and growth so they can have profitable wealth building businesses. Man, that's a lot of good stuff. Welcome, Shelyna.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Melissa.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you could be here today, because today we have kind of a really important topic to go over. And the topic is really all about all of the changes that are happening in the real estate space. So
if you're watching this, go grab a drink and get ready.
That's right. That's right. If you are a realtor in the United States, it's probably appropriate, but definitely if you're a realtor in Texas, because we're going to talk specifically about what's going on in Texas and regarding our forms and all of the things regarding the NAR potential proposed settlement to the lawsuit, and how that's going to affect you and your business. So if you're a realtor in Texas, buckle up. Here we go.
Oh, I'm ready.
Man. All right. Well, so Shelyna, the first thing that I think we should chat about is this, because we were prepping for, this discussion today. And you mentioned, I was in this Facebook group.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just
famous first word.
Yeah, famous first words instead of last words. I love that.
Yeah.
So, man, there's a lot of places for realtors to go and Facebook and talk to other realtors about all of their trials and tribulations of being a realtor. But if you're going to a Facebook group and you're asking a question in the Facebook group, you might be careful about the answers that you get and whether or not those really apply to you. Do you feel like that's true, Shelyna?
Oh man, I 100%. And I think my biggest concern is first of all, let me just say, I love the networking, community, camaraderie that these Facebook groups can give, the support, because we need that as agents. What I don't want to see happen is you're taking advice on something as big as this, dealing with contracts, from another realtor who may not be 100% correct or sure. I think your information, the first website is go to texasrealestate.com. And in your members section, there is a legal and ethics Q&A. Go check that first. Yeah. Then there's your broker, who is your ultimate decision maker, because that is who represents you, is your broker, then you. And so I think it's important to be careful that we are taking advice from other real estate professionals, not to say that they are all incorrect, but we got to be careful. And you might want to check with Texas Realtors and your broker on any information that you receive from another colleague in a Facebook group that's not your broker.
I agree. And you know what else? Can I just also say, if you are in the Facebook group and you just felt compelled to comment and answer the question that you may or may not really know the answer to, please refrain from answering that question.
Sit on your hands a little bit. And, if you really are inclined to answer that question, go call your broker and let the answer fit you. And, if your broker says, well, gee, I don't know, call the Texas Legal Hotline, get your answers. But also keep in mind, Texas Realtors does notify your broker that you did call. So hopefully both of you can get answers. And then when you're sharing your answer, you can say, my source was Texas Realtors Legal or my broker. But don't make rash decisions based on someone else's feelings about what the changes are.
Yeah. And whether or not they're educated on it. And by the way, their broker might be doing something different than your broker.
That I think that's the beauty of this business is every broker gets to decide how they're going to run a business. You also get to decide how you're going to run your business, but unless you are the broker for that brokerage, you can't decide how that brokerage is going to do business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And actually, that's a really good thought process for just a second, because I am a broker and I am the
Mhm.
managing broker at my office. And
Mhm.
so I get to decide, and I tell my agents, this is what we're doing, right? Because I'm the broker. But
Yeah,
Shelyna, you're also a broker, but you're not a managing
yeah.
broker. You're a broker associate,
No,
right? So
no,
while
I'm an
you,
independent broker now.
oh, you're an independent broker. Okay. Oh my
I
gosh.
am. Yes.
I did not know that. Okay.
I
Well, let me
became
just
an
back.
independent broker.
When did you do this?
I quietly did it back in April when I was dealing with some challenges at the time, and I just needed more time to help focus on home. And not to say that I couldn't do that under a brokerage, but it came with more responsibilities that pulled me away from my family. And it was time to focus on family, focus on health, and focus on my growth because I've been in a situation before where I've been with brokers and I just, ran myself into the ground. And it was a self choice, I'll admit. But it was time for me to change my focus. And so I quietly did it back in April. I haven't announced it yet, but hopefully by the time this podcast comes out, I will
You
announce
will have,
it
now you're going to have to announce it. Oh my gosh. I didn't
months
mean to put you
later.
on the spot.
No, I
Oh,
love it. Give me till Friday. I promise you
okay.
on Friday I'll say something. But it was a tough decision because as we're sitting here talking, brokers have to make difficult decisions, and that
Mhm.
includes policies and procedures and how agents will do things. And to your point, you're a managing broker. You have to decide, are my agents going to use the long buyer representation agreement or the short buyer's representation agreement? And so difficult decision that you have to make. And sometimes agents might not like the decisions their brokers make, but they have to trust that it's in the best interest of all the agents and not just one singular agent. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you have to be conscious of all of your agents, but I think you have to be conscious of a risk factor.
Yes.
As the
Oh,
broker, you have to know what are the what ifs if
yeah.
we do something this way, and you have to make sure that, because if the agent gets in trouble, the broker gets in trouble with them, right? So we have to make that
Yes.
determination. But where I was kind of going a minute ago, because I thought you were a broker associate somewhere, and
I
I was
told you
just
I
going to say,
quietly did
yeah, but there
it.
might be some people who are broker associates that are
Yeah.
listening. And if they
Hmm.
are, I think something important to remember is, while you are a broker, if you're not the managing broker, if you're not making decisions for the entire brokerage, then you
Yeah.
have to follow the rules for the entire brokerage, right? And I think that that's
Yeah.
an important thing. So whether you're an agent or a
And that's
broker
good to
associate.
keep in mind too. Sorry to jump in
No,
before I
you're fine.
forget my brain foggy. What you just said also applies to team leaders because
Mhm.
I think sometimes while team leaders, you're running a team and you can make the decision on how your teammates do something. You cannot make that decision on what forms the brokerages your team is going to use if your broker says something contrary to that.
Right.
You have to be in alignment with your broker. So I think now, more than ever before, team leaders and broker associates need to make sure you're in alignment with your broker, your managing broker, and understand, hey, how are we going to do things so I can ensure my team is also on board for how we're going to do things. So that's a great point.
Yeah, I agree with that. You know what else I think that is important is, regardless of whether you're the agent,
Mhm.
you're the broker associate, I think right now, with all of the changes that are currently in the mix, right? Because we're recording this in July of 2024 and
Yeah,
everything's
yeah,
still up in the air. And so
yeah.
we have some timelines that are super, super important for the
Mhm.
agents, the brokers, and the broker associates to all be
Mhm.
aware of. And that
Yeah.
is the timelines for compliance with the new documents from Texas Realtors, right? And what does that mean and why? So the Texas Realtors legal team came up with 19 forms changes or new forms. Like the total of them all together is 19 forms. So we've got 19 forms with edits and updates or new forms. And they created them for use beginning on June 24th. But some people were like, but wait, that whole lawsuit thing, the NAR stuff, everything says August 17th. So, but Shelyna, we're not waiting until August 17th, are we, to do the contract forms for Texas Realtors?
And you know, Melissa, great question. If you go back to the website that we just referenced, Texas Real Estate, your legal counsel with Texas Realtors posted a video. And in that video, they break down the timeline that if your let's say your broker has decided you're going to use the Texas Realtors forms, and we'll talk about the difference between the promulgated from TREC and Texas Realtors in a minute. But if your broker decides you're going to use the Texas Realtors forms as of June 24th, if you are working with a new buyer and seller, you will need to use the new forms, not August 17th. And the kicker to that is if you go into Zip Forms or wherever you use your forms, you won't even see the old ones. They should all be gone. So get into the practice and habit of the new forms. And if you have a template, let me warn you, go back and update that template, because you could be using a form that's outdated. And understand the difference between June 24th and August 17th. If you have a client that was already under contract prior to June 24th, but you have not executed to buy or sell, you can use up until August 17th to switch them to an amendment, get an amendment and get them on the new contract. But that does not apply for new buyers and sellers. So if you went out and you showed a buyer a property after August 24th and you didn't have a buyer rep agreement signed, go talk to your broker. Because that is from Texas Realtors. This is not, you know, Shelyna or Melissa making anything up to scare you or to say you're doing something wrong. But your Texas Realtors, if you're a member, has said if you're using these forms August 24th, you need to have these agreements signed. And that's one of the things I'm seeing in online platforms is you don't have to do anything until August 17th.
Yeah. No, June 24th, y'all. June 24th. That was your date to start using the new forms. But there's a reason why. Okay, so I think sometimes people understand what they're supposed to do better when they understand the why behind what's going on. So let's talk about some other timelines. All right, so what's the August 17th timeline? So the August 17th timeline, in case you don't know, that is the deadline from the NAR settlement, this proposed settlement that says across the country, nationwide, every state, every realtor, y'all, there's over 1 million of us, every realtor, every MLS across the country by August 17th will have removed offers of compensation from the MLS. Okay.
Yes.
So knowing that, that's the deadline. Does everybody wait until the deadline? Well, yeah, a lot of people do, but not everybody. Texas, y'all, we're super ahead of the game over here in Texas. So in Texas Realtors, our trade association said, you know, we don't want August 17th to arrive, all the MLSs to remove the stuff, and for our agents to not have the items in place that they need to make sure that they are paid for the services that they are providing. So in order to ensure you're still going to be compensated for the good and valuable services that you're providing, we're going to give you a form to start using early. And that way, as you obtain new buyers and sellers, like you were just saying, Shelyna, as you obtain new buyers and sellers, you can use this new form that is compliant with the new rules that will all be governing everything starting August 17th.
Beautifully said, Melissa. That was beautifully
so we're
said.
getting them early. That's all we're doing. We're getting them early. And it's a really good thing we are, because in some MLSs, they're ahead of the August 17th deadline.
Yeah.
I don't know about all the MLSs, but the MLS I'm a member of in North Texas, the Netris MLS, they're saying that the field is going to disappear at the end of July. That's like
And I think that's important to
15 days
keep in
early.
mind because people think August 17th is the date. And you just made a great point to remind people that the date may have happened before August 17th. And Texas Realtors want you to be prepared for that to happen.
Yeah.
That's why they've given you these new forms. So you can't just ignore it and say, yeah, I'm not going to do that, because you'll end up one of the case studies that we talk about in our legal 1 and 2 class.
That's right. Well,
We
yeah,
don't want that to happen.
because here's the risk, right? If I'm a real estate agent and I choose not to use the new forms, and we get to August the 17th, and in August 17th, there's no more offers of cooperation and compensation. The offers of cooperation are still there, but the offers of compensation are no longer part of the MLS. And now I'm under contract to help my buyer, and my buyer makes an offer on a house on August the 20th. There's no guarantee I'm getting paid if I am not using the appropriate forms, explaining the appropriate thing, and using things like the new forms and the revised forms that talk about compensation.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I never wanted to work for free. I take that back, Shelyna. I volunteer a lot. I volunteer a lot. You volunteer a lot.
Yes, we do.
We both love this profession, and we volunteer a lot on lots of committees, but I never wanted to volunteer to take a buyer and a seller out shopping. That's how I can afford to volunteer on all the other things I do.
Yeah. And I think that, one of the things I tell agents all the time is you should not be waiting until you have a client to practice your contracts. Get in there now. I think that is one of my, if you want to give me a pet peeve for real estate, I kind of feel like I'm really patient with people. I love to take my time and help explain. But if you knew that a contract changed and your broker says, use this, and you decline to even look at it, and now you've got a client and you want the world to stop because you don't understand it, because you just didn't have the time, that is unfair to your client. And that's what causes people to lose trust in what you do, because you couldn't take the time to do it beforehand. So take a moment, stop, and go back and look at the contracts and ask the question. Go to your broker and say, hey, I don't understand this. And better yet, Texas Realtors has put how to use this form on their website.
For sure. There's so many resources, but I think you're right. Your primary resource is your broker. Go to your broker. Please know that Texas Realtors has attorneys, and they have written some great documents for us and some great explanation documents for us and some training for us. But you know what else? Go take a training. Go take a CE class. Because you know what else I think, Shelyna, and you and I are both educators, and we're proponents of education. And I think the smarter you are at your real estate business, the more you can help your consumers, and the better it is for everybody, right? But I think that if I was a brand new person thinking about getting a real estate license, I would have to take some contracts training before I even got a license. And then I would get my license. And before my broker would let me go out and work with the consumer, you know what else I would need? More contracts training. And I feel like just because you think you did it before doesn't mean you know how to do it moving forward. And you just need more contracts training.
And that goes for my friends who I've been in real estate for 300 years. Well, congratulations. And the contracts have updated. So we're all in the same arena. We are all playing in the same sandbox right now. And whether or not you elevate will depend on how much time you take learning and understanding what this contract means for your client. I always tell people, look at the blank spaces. Look at anywhere where it says someone can terminate and money is attached. If you don't understand those, ask for help. But getting with your client, and now you're sitting in front of your client and you want to text your broker and say, hey, I don't understand this. And the client just asks a question about it. And you get upset with your broker because they didn't respond in 3 seconds. That's unfair. That is and I know some managing brokers who manage 5, and then there's managing brokers who manage 500. And you can't expect them to jump just because you said jump, which brings me to the short form and the long form differences. So Melissa,
there's a lot going on with these forms. Yeah.
Gonna get spicy, as my grandson would say.
That's all right. It's a spicy topic.
Yeah.
It's a spicy topic. So do you want to talk about, like, why don't we dive into that a little bit? Like, what is the
Yeah.
difference? But first of all, let's just say, everybody, if you're listening and you didn't know, there's a short buyer rep agreement now in Texas. It's a one-page document. There's the long buyer representation agreement. It's probably still 5 pages long. I haven't counted lately, but
Yeah.
I'm sure it is. And so
Yeah,
you
it is.
have two choices, not to mention, again, like you said before, Shelyna, that your broker may have their own that was drafted by an
Yeah.
attorney, and you might need to use that one instead. But if
Yeah.
you are using the Texas Realtors forms, there are two choices. So what's the difference besides one's 4 pages longer than the other?
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? To add to what Melissa said, there the biggest thing to understand, will my broker allow me to use the short form?
Oh,
So as you're looking at it, you have to have that conversation to say, hey, broker, will we be using the short form? And one of the biggest difference, the first thing that pops out is you now have this option to have showing services. And it's important to understand what showing services includes, which you still have a fiduciary responsibility. And one of the questions on the in the Q&A, and Melissa, do you mind if I go ahead and read that first question on
yeah.
there?
No, go right ahead.
On the Texas Real Estate website, the first question says, what are my duties and responsibilities if my client selects showing service in the residential buyer tenant representation agreement short form TXR 1507? And so you need to know the difference between services and responsibility. Like, for instance, someone said, well, I don't have to submit an offer for them. Actually, you do. If they give you the offer, then you give it to the seller. But there are some services you offer that you don't have to do with a showing service. The other thing is the compensation. The short form says, I'm going to compensate my real estate professional, my realtor, X amount of dollars for being a showing service. Dear realtors, this is not a side hustle job where you're going to be collecting this additional fee. Don't go open up a Venmo account, a Zelle account, and think you're going to be getting this extra change for a pair of shoes or whatever it is you want. This is a broker decision because it says broker. So you need to go back and have that conversation with your broker on what does that compensation look like?
Yeah.
Where does the client deposit it? What do you
Yeah.
think, Melissa?
I think that agents need to know that all representation agreements are between the broker, and all compensation is paid to the broker. And if you are an agent, you are not allowed to take that showing money and put it in your pocket. It's not allowed by Texas real estate laws. It's not allowed.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you're going to use the form because your broker said you could, you know what else your broker's probably going to tell you is how much money your broker office policy is to charge for those services.
Yeah.
And then it also ought to say in our broker office policy is this is how we collect that money.
Yeah,
Because
that's
it's
good.
not willy-nilly pick your number because your broker didn't tell you. And it's not willy-nilly put it in your pocket because nobody told you otherwise. No,
Yeah.
it's the broker's decision on how much to charge. And it's the broker's decision on how they're going to be paid. And then there's going to be I don't know, a commission split or whatever thing you're already on with your broker. They're going to tell you what that looks like, because some of that money is probably going to be retained by the broker. They're going to have to process all that stuff.
That's why I said your broker might decide this is too much for me to do right now, and we're not using the short form.
Well,
And so
here's where I could see it being really problematic. If I had 500 agents, just for
yes.
giggles, I don't, but if I did, and all 500 of them went out on Saturday to show houses to first-time potential people that they were meeting for the first time, and all 500 of them got a buyer that said, I just want you to show me the house. I don't want you to do all of the other services. I just want to pay you for showing services. And when I come into the office on Monday and I have all of this money that's been sent to the office for all of these dollars for all of these random people that I don't, that thing is just an accounting mess waiting to potentially happen on Monday mornings.
Absolutely. And I can see a problem coming in, and we are held to a higher standard of ethics. I
Yeah.
can see a problem coming in with an agent saying, just give me cash or just give me X, Y, and Z. And now that you don't turn that into the broker per what the broker stated, and now we have a problem.
Well, and here's where you're going to have a problem is an agent's going to think, well, nobody will know. And then
Yes,
something's going to
there
happen
you
with
go.
that buyer, and that buyer's going to be peeved about something. They're either not going to get the house that they thought
Yeah.
they were going to get because you didn't help them because you were only a showing agent or whatever.
Mhm.
And they're going to get mad and they're going to complain. And when they complain, who's going to get in trouble with you as your broker? And your broker's going to be
Yeah.
like, wait a minute, you took how much money from that consumer? You
Yes, you
are
did what?
fired. I would be like, you are fired.
Right. And it's one of those things where I really want agents to slow down
Mhm.
and really understand what the repercussions of this can be.
Sure.
And again, we don't want to see you become a case study. And
Oh,
what do I mean by case study? That means that, something happened. Now Texas Realtors knows about it, your board knows about it, Trek knows about it, and they decide we need to add this in the legal class so others don't make the same mistake. And so
yeah.
another one of those that came was about open houses.
Yeah.
I'm the listing agent. Do I need to have a buyer sign a buyer representation agreement? And then sub-agency comes into place, which most people don't even know what a sub-agent is,
Yeah.
or if their broker will allow sub-agency.
Yeah.
So that open house thing is a whole nother huge can of worms
Yeah.
for conversation.
I think we need to talk about open houses, but let's finish up with this contracty thing real quick first and the documents. And
Yeah.
then I think we do need to talk about open houses for just a second.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I think is important is people need to know that there's more forms changes coming. You might think,
Oh,
oh, we're
yeah.
done. We're done. They're all 6/24,
Yeah.
June 24th. It's happening. Y'all, I'm just going to tell you right now, Trek's working on stuff. The real estate commission is different from Texas Realtors. And the real estate
Can you go over
commission,
a little bit of that so that they understand that difference? Because I don't think people know.
yeah. Okay. So Trek, being the Texas Real Estate Commission, is they promulgate contract documents. They promulgate forms, and generally speaking, everything that they do is a contract document between a buyer and a seller. So
Yeah.
Trek doesn't get into buyer representation agreements or listing agreements, right? Those are forms that either an attorney can draft, or if you are a member of a board of realtors like Texas Realtors, as a member benefit, you're going to get these buyer rep agreements and listing agreements provided for you. Um,
Yeah.
but Trek Trek is looking at the documents. But the thing about Trek is that it's also regulated. It's a regulated agency. It's got
Yeah.
state regulatory things going on. And on broker lawyer committee, we meet once a quarter. We talk about the
Mhm.
documents. When we have documents approved that need to be by the broker lawyer committee, they're approved by that committee and they need to go out. There's a whole process where it goes up to the commission. The commission looks at them. If they think they look good, they send them out for public comment. Public comment
Yeah.
comes out, then they come back. It's a whole very lengthy process, which is why
Mhm.
you don't have anything new from Trek yet. But Trek
Yeah.
is aware of what's happening, and Trek understands that there needs to be some forms changes regarding compensation, and we need to take out any reference to the MLS in our documents and things like that. But Texas Realtors, on the other hand, when you paid your realtor dues to Texas Realtors, you got a lot of great benefits. You got that legal hotline, right, Shelyna, that you were talking about,
Yeah.
but you also got all of these forms. And Texas
Yeah.
Realtors isn't as regulated in the same way. And so they were able to meet as a forms committee, talk to their attorneys, come up with some things, do that on a much faster timeline. And here we are, June 24th, the forms were available. That's a,
Yeah.
that's a really amazing turnaround because it's not happening that fast at Trek. But
And
new,
that was one, thank you for that, because
yeah,
I've got questions about, okay, so why hasn't the 1 to 4 family contract come out yet? So
yeah,
that's why I asked you that question.
yeah.
So that's why I asked that.
And if there is any changes to any of the forms from Trek, right now, the most quickly anticipated timeline is going to be towards the end of 2024. It'll definitely be after August 17th, after the deadline for the MLS rules changes.
Yeah.
It'll be after that. So yeah, okay. So we've got this difference between the truck forms and the TXR forms. We know that there's a short form and a long form. We know that on the buyer rep agreement from Texas Realtors, the short form that we can do these limited services, the showing service only, if our broker allows it and provides us with the information to do so. Do you have any thoughts on any of the other things that are different between the short form and the long form? Because from a broker's perspective, I have some other thoughts on the long form versus the short form that I think agents might be like, how come my broker won't let me? And they don't understand the rationale. But I don't know, as a independent broker,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts
Yeah.
on
And
the differences between the two forms? Like, I mean, do
yeah,
you
I
feel?
think the long form gave me more details
Mhm.
where the short form compressed it. And I get the rationale. Hey, you know, some people are intimidated by a 5, 6 page buyer rep agreement and they just want to see some houses. And so where you have some other items that were in the long form are not over in the short form, or you get a sentence versus an explanation. So you need to know that sentence, what is the context behind what that sentence means versus over here on the long form, I know the detail because I can read that paragraph to that buyer versus now I just got a sentence. So and keep in mind, if your buyer wants to switch because your buyer, so showing service, I'm going to open a door.
Okay.
You send me an offer.
Yeah.
I'm going to send it over. But I'm not going to sit here and I'm not going to give you that buyer consultation that I normally would have given that told you what services, how I'm going to do it, what I'm going to do for you. No, you just hired me and you paid. Now, I want to make it very clear that y'all understand. Well, I said y'all, you guys, you all understand that that payment happens when they sign that agreement.
Yeah.
Not after you show a house, it's when they sign that agreement. So I'm telling you, I'm going to open this door. When I get in there, don't start asking me about comps.
I love it.
That's how
Let me
quiet
just let that hang
you
in
ask.
the air for a second. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you can switch back to the long form where I give you all of my services, but short form, you just ask me to open a door. And if you send me an offer and y'all can find this, you guys can find this information on the Texas Realtors website on what you need to do and the differences between that long and short form. But understand, if you're a buyer and you start telling me, well, I need you to go run comps, I need you to go find this, I need you to go do due diligence here, and then this, and then this. Well, let's go ahead and switch to that long form so that I can take care of those things for you.
Yeah, let me offer you full services. And you can stay on the short form and switch between showing service only to full service. But boy, if you're going to switch to full service, you might as well switch to the whole long form. And so some of my thoughts too include, like, there's an indemnity clause in there, there's additional notices in there, there's stuff about fair housing in the long form that's not in the short form. There's all kinds of good stuff in there. The protection period in the long form, not the short form. I mean, and I'm just rattling some off my head.
Yeah.
There is a reason those things are in the long form. It is for everybody's protection. And if I'm going to offer full services, I don't want to just offer full services with one sentence, where on the other form it can be an entire paragraph or entire paragraphs that aren't even in the short form. I think that agents need to be aware that this may or may not be why their broker is making a decision one way or the other. And can I also just say really quick, I think I've used this example a couple of times. Can I give you an example, Shelyna? I love this example.
Yes, I love the visual. Yes, come on.
Okay, that's a visual. It is a good visual. So real estate agents are very comfortable with their buyer. Like, let's just pretend like nothing new was happening with NAR. This was last year, right? Last month, 2 months ago, whatever. You take your buyer, you show them the house, they like the house, they make the offer based on the current information that they have in front of them. And then what's the very first thing they do? They get a home inspection. And you know what? New information becomes available.
Yeah.
And when the new information becomes available, what does that buyer do? Well, they want to renegotiate, right, Shelyna?
Yep.
And they're going to make a change because new information is available.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm living that life right now.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
I
Yeah.
mean, I have the information I have about the NAR proposed settlement agreement. It's not final by the courts yet. It hadn't gone through the process. And
Right.
based on that information, I'm making decisions about my business and my brokerage and the forms I'm going to use. But I'm just going to say later, if something changes in the lawsuit, or that settlement doesn't get approved, or the DOJ makes a change, or sticks their nose in things and makes the whatever, I'm going to have at
That,
that point new information. And I might make
right.
different decisions and make changes. And so I think it's important for agents to know that their brokers are going off of the best information they have, and they're training them and they're giving them information and they're answering their questions. And later, their broker might change their mind.
Well, think about how many times we as instructors were emailed that something changed. And I think we have to be flexible
Yes.
with those changes as they come. I mean, we have to, don't be so hard set in stone, but also be informed, because Melissa and I have been, one week it was here it is, and then 2 days later it was here's a new one, and then 3 days later it's here's a new one.
Yeah.
We are all going through the trenches together, so we have to remain flexible but still remain updated.
Yeah, yeah, you got to stay in the know for sure. You got to plug in and listen to stuff like this, take classes, talk to your broker, read all the FAQs on all of the resources that we're going to give you.
Yeah.
All of those things are ways to stay updated. Just don't take advice from other realtors in a Facebook group if they're not the broker.
And make it clear, Texas Realtors is not your attorney when you call that legal hotline, because they keep telling me that. I always call over there and they're like, Shelyna, we are not your attorney. Like, I get it, but
I have a
but
question. Yeah.
I have a question. And you know, it's important to keep in mind that be gentle with your instructors,
Yeah.
because we are getting the same information. We're being taught how to teach you this information, and we're getting it in real time. We're taking it and disseminating it to understand how to give it to you, but we are not making up rules. We're
Yeah.
taking the same information. So if you hear it from an instructor, it should be the same information that Texas Realtors has provided. So be gentle with us. If we give you something today and we come back next week and say, hey, it changed and updated, we're the messenger, and we're just trying to help you understand those changes. So be gentle with your local real estate professional instructor.
Your instructor. Yeah, I agree. I am 1,000% sure I taught at least one and maybe two classes after the first change, after the forms came out, and then there was the first change, and then I taught, and then there was another change, and I'm like, dang, I already taught classes with wrong forms just yesterday.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, brother, new information coming available right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, because it is changing and it is new, and we need to do our best to stay plugged in and stay on top of it in order to be a professional. And that's how you're going to stay relevant in real estate, is if you become a professional and you understand what's happening so you can explain it to the consumer so that they can know how to move forward. That's all there is
I'm
to it.
writing that down.
It's good.
Yeah. That was really good. Yeah.
I love it. Okay, so can we circle back to that whole open house debacle?
Yes,
Because
yes.
one thing I've been telling Shelyna, one thing I've been telling people is this. I have been saying there's a lot that's changing, but there's a lot of things that didn't change. Because I think change is hard and people get all freaked out when there's too much change. And so if you're getting freaked out, if that's you and you're getting freaked out about change and there's too much changing and you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm just going to give up. I just want to remind those people that there's a lot of things that didn't change. Like the law of agency didn't change. And that we're going to talk about in these open houses. But the Real Estate License Act didn't change. TREC rules didn't change. The NAR Code of Ethics didn't change. P53, Procedural Rule 53 didn't change. RESPA didn't change. Like, there's so much stuff that didn't change.
Yeah, that's good.
But the law of agency didn't change. And so, and neither did the TREC rules. And so one of the things to note, one of the rules that I think people need to understand is how this agency thing works, right? And in Texas, Shelyna, can you go inside of a house and not represent somebody?
No.
No.
Mm-mm.
All right.
Mm.
So if I'm an agent and I know that when I'm inside of a house, I either have to represent the buyer or the seller. If I can
Yeah.
get that concept down, I think the open house problem sort of figures itself out.
That is so good. And I think the law of agency is where people glass over versus understand the concept, because if they understood that concept, this open house, it's a hot button, would be simmered down a little bit.
Yeah. All right. So what's the issue with the open houses? What do people need to know, or
Yeah.
what'd you hear in that Facebook group, girlfriend?
So here's the thing to remember in Texas, you representing somebody. You're
Mhm.
representing someone. You're either representing the seller or you're representing a buyer. And the thing is, we have to make sure that people know who you represent. And I find a lot of times agents are posting in these groups that they're not doing that. It's like you're literally putting out there what you're not going to do that goes against what your license told you to do. So with this new rule change, when you're doing an open house, so here's the question that comes up a lot, and this question is on the Texas Realtor site, and they've answered it. Well, let me read it directly from there. What if agents are holding open houses for sellers outside of their brokerage, or builders allow agents to hold their inventory open houses? What agreement should be required? And if you are the sub agency, if you are hosting an open house for another agent, that's a sub agent. Did your broker give you permission to do that?
The listing broker.
Yeah, right. Did the
Yeah.
listing broker give you permission to enter into a sub agency agreement because you need someone to host an open house? Oh, they didn't, but you did it anyway. That's a problem.
Well,
Now I'm in the open house.
yeah,
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Because I was going to say, well, I mean, I think that people didn't understand that, but I think that also brokers need to think about their E&O insurance.
Oh,
Ah,
the money.
okay. Maybe we don't go there that
Yes.
deep in this conversation.
Ooh.
But
Okay,
there's so
now
much
I know
more that
we need, oh, Melissa, that right there, I don't think agents know how deep that goes.
yeah.
They that understanding, who, okay.
And this
I
is
digress.
why I think, but we're going to keep going because you were on a good
Yeah,
train of thought, and I want you to keep going. But I think this
yeah.
is why some brokers say my agents do not host open houses at other places that aren't our listings. And
There you
some
go.
brokers say my agents are not allowed to ask you to host an open house if you don't work for a brokerage. Because let me just ask you a question, Shelyna. If you and I worked
Yeah.
at the same brokerage and you had a listing and I wanted to hold your listing open, am I representing the seller?
You are, because we're under the same brokerage and the broker represents the seller.
Right. So agents across your office can share and host each other's properties open with no problem, and there's no agency issue and there's no forms issue because we're all clear that the broker has the listing, and so we therefore all represent the broker when we go inside to host the open house. So I think that's important. The problem comes if I work for one brand and you work for another brand and you want to hold my house open or I want to hold yours open. So I want you to keep kind of going down that train where you had a good train of thought about.
But you hit me with that good one with that E&O, that right there. That's and I love what you just did, because I think it's important for agents to understand the why behind it. Because a lot of times I'll see people post that in Texas you're not allowed to hold an open house for another broker. Back up. Texas didn't say that. What did your broker say?
Yeah.
That's who you need to be following. And so with this, let's say I'm hosting an open house for another brokerage and a buyer walks in. The first thing that I should have had in place was a sub agency to let that buyer know I represent the seller.
Sure. But if I don't have that, maybe the listing broker's like, I'm not letting you be a sub agent. So now when I'm standing there at the front door, I don't represent the seller. So now who do I have to represent? I got to get a buyer rep from everybody who walks in the front door.
So let's go with Texas Realtors, how Texas Realtors answered this question.
I love it. Let's hear what they have to say.
Yes, unless the agent holding the open house is an agent of the listing firm or a sub-agent of the listing firm, requires listing firm authorization. So it requires that broker's authorization.
Mhm.
The agent would need a written agreement with the buyer to show the home. Members can use residential buyer tenant representation agreement text TXR 1501 and amendment to buyer/tenant representation agreement TXR 1505 to meet the written agreement requirement. So let me say that in Texas Realtors language. If you don't have a sub-agency in place, you need to have that buyer sign a representation agreement to show that property, period.
Okay, so here's how my open houses are going to go because it's never hot in Texas. It's never like 110 degrees outside. So it's
Wait.
okay.
What part of Texas are you in?
So it's okay that I'm sitting on the front porch sweating a lot with my stack of forms saying, if you would like to come in, please sign here. And then you're welcome to come inside.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. It's
sounds
gonna get
awful.
it's gonna get hotter and hotter because here's the thing. My opinion, and I would love to know what you think. I think it's a disservice to not explain or to not help that person understand what they're signing before you put a piece of paper in their face and say, here, sign this. There's some things in there that they might not understand. Maybe it's a first time home buyer. They didn't understand, and you just shove the paper in their face and says, sign here. I can't show you that, sign here. So I don't know how many listing brokers are going to be okay with another agent hosting an open house for them. Here's a good short answer. What does your broker's policy say?
Yeah, 100%. It's always going to go back to your broker's policy. But man, if you are a broker and you are going to let your people use the short form on the buyer rep agreement and you want them to have showing services only, and maybe showing services only has a fee for it, and that's the only option. And now I'm sitting in front of the house, Shelyna, and it's 110 degrees. And I say, would you like to come in, sign this piece of paper and pay me this fee before you can come in? Oh, brother.
Oh, what if that broker, let's just play that game. What if that broker charged $100? Just saying, we're not discussing any.
Yeah, who knows what they're charging? It could be
What if they
$1, it could be
charge
zero. It could be zero.
Yeah.
But it could be also $1, $10, $100, $1,000, $10,000. Like, take your pick. There's no set number.
Regardless of what it says, you got to get it signed.
Yeah, how much am I as a buyer willing to pay to stand in the heat to sign a form with somebody I don't know and pay them some money to come in and look at an open house? First of all, this isn't good for the buyer, nor is it good for the seller, nor is it good for the real estate agent, because I'm not sweating out there on the front porch for nothing.
That is so deep. Ooh, Melissa, that is deep. It's good. It's deep. And I think the more we know, the more we grow.
That's right. I like that. The more we know, the more we grow. I love it.
Yes.
Man. All right. Well, I feel like we've had a really good chat about a lot of things that are important. I totally think we need to keep talking about stuff, and we need to probably do another podcast coming up in the near future. But
well, one more thing, Melissa, because
yes.
I heard you mention it. This was a question that came up. Can we put 0 for showing services? So like you mentioned, if we're at an open house, that was one of the questions that Texas Realtors did answer. And they said, yes, the broker and buyer can agree on any amount, but the key word is your broker, not you. You can't go in front of an open house and decide, hey, I'm going to charge somebody X, Y, and Z to come in. What did your broker authorize? If your broker said 0, Texas Realtor said you can do that, but again, it's the broker.
Yeah, 100%. It's always the broker, and you got to follow your broker's office policy. And there's never a requirement for it to be any dollar amount. It can definitely be 0. But you know what I want to do before we get out of here, Shelyna, is you were reading from some really great places. And so I think where you were reading from was from the Texas Realtors site. Do you know the URL up there that you can tell people if you want to go look up this information, here's where you can go and look?
Well, if you log into your Texas Realtors member portal, and as soon as you log in, you scroll down, it says legal. When you click on that button, it takes you directly to the questions, and it's texasrealestate.com/members/legal-and-ethics. But if you go and log in, to texasrealestate.com into your member portal, it is the very first icon that pops up. You click it and it takes you directly to where we were reading. And there's also, if you are a member of the Collin County Area Realtors, we have gotten together as instructors and helped to answer some of these Q&A questions. And so it's also at ccar.net/new-forms. And you will find the FAQ there as well. There were a lot of questions. There were 29 questions that we answered that came as a result of a class that was hosted by Melissa. Melissa, kudos to you, because I know that was not an easy thing to jump on there with all these changes, and the questions came in hot and heavy, and we've done our best to try to answer them.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So y'all use your Texas Realtors as a resource, use your broker as a resource, use your local board of realtors. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I forgot one more website. It's www.facts.realtor, FACTS.realtor. That was one more website. Sorry.
Yeah, that one's super important because that one has that's from NAR, and that has everything about the settlement. It's not just about Texas. It's not just about our forms, but it's everything about that August 17th date and why it was the date and when's the lawsuit going to be finalized, the settlement's going to be finalized. And all of that stuff is in there, and it's more of like a nationwide picture, but boy, it's good information.
Yeah. So we need part 2, Melissa. I would love for us to come back after, the August date and see what feedback we've been getting, because I think it's going to be a lot of trial and error where, people are not going to understand some things. And we love your feedback. We love your questions, because that's what we do. Answer questions.
I agree with that. Yeah. If you have questions, definitely go to your broker, go to Texas Realtors. You're certainly welcome. I mean, Shelyna and I both are instructors with Agent Advantage. You're welcome to go on the Agent Advantage website and ask questions, and we may not answer them, but we'll go point you in a good direction from Agent Advantage, because while we are both brokers, we are not your broker. Yeah, go talk to your broker, but we will try to point you in a good direction and get you going to a place where you can find the answers that you need, because it's every agent's responsibility right now to be educated themselves so that they can best help their consumer, their buyer or their seller or their landlord or their tenant, by the way. It's your responsibility to be plugged in. So thanks for listening today. I hope you got some really good nuggets of information, and come back and join us and listen in for the next episode.
You guys are going to be okay. And we look forward to seeing you all soon at Agent Advantage. Bye, guys.
That is exactly right. Y'all stay out there selling some houses.
That's it.
I love it. All right.